of you we know that, Betsy and I were talking about this yesterday, and this is really the first time we've been able to sort of give an overview of who we are and what we do in a visual sense. We've done a lot of talking to you and with you, and so we're just delighted to have been asked to do this today. I am going to turn my screen. Can we share a screen, Sam, so that I can get some slides up? We're going to do some slides. We'll give you an overview of who we are, and then let's see here if we get it right, and then we'll talk about the project. Can you see that screen?
We can.
Whoa, look at that. It worked first time. What do you know? Okay. So as Sam mentioned, I am Jen Wright. I'm the director at Grass River, and just an amazing organization. And so, one of the things we have said all along is that we struggle with the fact that so many people do not know us, do not know about us, even though we've been around for 52 years. And so one of the sort of extra benefits for being a Impact 100 finalist is that we are getting the word out to those of you that are in this group, as well as the rest of Impact. And it is helping to sort of spread our mission and get us into areas that we maybe not have been in before. So thank you to all of you, for hosting us today, but more importantly for supporting Grass River in the way that you did in 2021 with our final grant, being a final grant recipient in September. We're just delighted to have been chosen. So what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about the project that you have funded. But ahead of that, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are, since we are sort of an unknown to some of you, sort of new to the world. So Grass River's mission is to manage the Grass River Natural Area. We'll tell you a little bit more about what that means, but we do that by conserving and protecting the watershed. The watershed is really the key reason that Grass River exists. We provide opportunities to increase knowledge. So we have an educational component, appreciation. So just getting people out there and understanding the importance of our natural world. And then also this community-wide stewardship of the natural environment. So hosting programs, school groups, interacting with the public in a variety of ways through different partnerships, and really bringing this together as a community-based organization. So we focus heavily on that. We are located on the Elk Rapids chain of lakes. And so Urkel, some of you may have heard it called that. We are directly between Lake Bel Air and Clam Lake. We're on Alden Highway. So if you're coming from Alden to Bel Air, you've passed our sign, past our entrance. The chain of lakes, which we'll tell you a little bit in just a minute, is the body of water that flows directly into East Grand Traverse Bay. So any water that comes into or 60% of the water that comes into the bay comes from the chain of lakes. And you can see that includes Torch Lake, it includes Elk Lake, and then a whole bunch of smaller lakes north of us. We call that the upper chain. Just a few quick facts. We are 52 years old, so 1969 is when we started. Are we hitting in 53 this year? I guess we're continuing to age in a good way. We started as a grassroots effort, and so we had a group of volunteers who saw the value of the wetlands surrounding the Grass River, and they began the efforts and the work to save. It started with a few properties and now has expanded to 73 different parcels. And we total 1,492 acres. So it's a fairly large space to manage. It includes over 6 miles of the Grass River shoreline. And so we own a significant portion, not all of the Grass River, but a significant portion is owned by the Grass River and is managed by us. And we have about 7.5 miles of hiking trails, of which a little over 1.25 miles consist of a boardwalk. Most of the land and the facilities are owned by Antrim County. We have a really fascinating partnership. We're a public-private partnership from the very beginning. When we were founded, it was under the auspices of Antrim County. So we, as Grass River Inc., are a nonprofit. We have a contract to manage this natural area. And so we work closely with the county. It's a wonderful relationship. It's really has become, over the years, it's been a model program for other organizations and entities that want to share this public-private partnership arrangement with natural areas. So that's been an interesting management technique. We have a very diverse inventory of species at Grass River. It's a very special piece of property. So you can see the numbers, plants and mammals and reptiles and amphibians and birds. And we do a lot of different biological research on that. We also have several species of state threatened and endangered species. So it's an area that we take, we protect, and we feel very honored to be able to do that because of these very special species that do exist on our property. So I mentioned the ecological significance. So we have about 9 different habitat types at Grass River. And one of the interesting things that was done in 2017 is we brought in a team of experts from the Michigan Natural Features Inventory. So it's basically a group that goes out and assesses properties around the state. They look for invasive species. They look for notable species of threatened and endangered. They're kind of the experts in that area. So they came out and they did a full assessment of our property. We have what's called a fen, a northern fen. So if you've ever been on our boardwalk and you've gone out to the river, you've actually been in part of that fen. And we're the second largest fen of 31 that are in northern Michigan. And we are one of only 6 of those 31 who got an AB ranking, which is basically the highest ranking that you can get. So what that means is that we have very few invasive species, we have high quality plant populations, and we have water quality that is exemplary as well. So all of those things together really help paint the picture for why we do the work that we do to protect this area. I mentioned to you as well the surface water. So we take this very seriously. The water comes through the chain of lakes, comes through the Grass River, and eventually that water travels those lakes that you saw on that map, and it ends up in the Grand Traverse Bay. And so we, the work that we're doing to filter and protect and keep that water clean is not only important to us, but it's important to everybody who lives downstream from us, including those of you in Traverse. So it's a pretty important piece of our work.
Jen,
Yeah,
sorry, could you go back to
that's
right. Could you go back to the previous slide for a minute?
Certainly.
I just want to show people where our fen is.
Yeah.
So if you see this is our, the Grass River's in the background here. And the education center is here in the center of the photograph. I don't have a pointer, I'd point it for you. If you go directly up from that area that's between where you can see open water and the shore is the fen area. Is that I'm correct? Yes,
yeah. Jen?
Yep.
Yeah, actually here, can you see that?
There you go. That's what we needed.
Yeah. So
that's where the filtration of the water takes place. That's all a marsh area, and the water flows through there, and all of or many of the pollutants and other things that make the water not as wonderful. Wasn't very scientific. Are filtered out. Jen will do the scientific part.
No, that's great. It's a good representation. So we received a drone. We purchased a drone with some grant money in the last year. And so some of these pictures that you're going to see are vantage points that many of us have never seen. So I'm glad Betsy pointed that out. Thank you. So I want to, share a little bit about how we've been doing as an organization in the last couple of years. And what I can say in a nutshell is that we continue to grow. I mean, COVID, as difficult as it was to send people home and cancel programming, we continue to see more and more people visiting us at Grass River. And so you can just see here from this chart, in 2020, we had a 33% increase in vehicle traffic. And then if you look at our trail map here on the right, you can see the peaks that also reflect those increase in visitation. This year, in 2021, you'll see we dipped a little bit, but I have to put a caveat in because I know we would have beat the numbers in 2020. If any of you saw the news in August, we had a major rainstorm and Alden Highway was completely washed out at Finch Creek. Finch Creek is the main creek that flows through Grass River. So there was no entrance to our facility from the Bel Air. There was entrance from Bel Air, but you had to take a significant detour. We lost a ton of visitation in August and September because of that. So I just say that because I like numbers and I would love to have seen that graph higher. And I think it would have had we been able to keep that road open all summer. But the reality is people continue to come. They see the value of nature and they're learning about us through our increased marketing and efforts like this. And we continue to expand our reach into the community. So how do we share our mission? We have a variety of different ways that we do that, but the two main ones I'm going to share with you are education is the first one. So if you've looked at our website, or if you've come out to visit us, you'll see that we do a series of programs for adults and kids. We have camps. So we just finished winter camp. We're working on spring camp. Our summer camp this year is doubling in size, and we continue to have wait lists. So that's become a really popular feature for families in our area. We go into and schools come to us. That slowed down significantly during COVID, but we did have our first school program back in the school last Friday. So hopefully things continue to increase there. We also do a lot of specialty programs. So we have a partnership with Mill Creek Elementary in Elk Rapids. NMC has a series of classes that they hire our staff to do those programs, and some of them are virtual. A lot of them have an on-site component. So we're able to get new folks out, and they're learning about things like mushrooms or aquatic invertebrates or maple sugaring, those sorts of things. And then we also have increased our experience-based opportunities. So a couple of years ago, we received funding to purchase some kayaks. So now we rent kayaks in the summertime. You can come out and either take a tour with us, or you can just come out and pay a rental fee, and we'll get you set up out on the dock and get onto Grass River. Grass River is extremely paddleable, if that's a word, but you can go upstream and downstream very easily. So it's the perfect situation. We also have some snowshoes and cross-country skis. So you can come out and experience the outdoors in a variety of different ways. And that has really, I think, expanded our reach as well, bringing new people in. Interpretation is important. So our field, we call it interpretation, which basically means we are interpreting nature or the natural history of the natural world to people. So we do that through a series of interpretive displays at our center. We do have a building where people can come in and get warm and learn a little bit about the nature center and the natural area. We are regional experts, and we do trainings for other organizations. So MMC is another example of when we do that sort of thing. And then we have a series of signs that we install around the property so that when people cannot come in, COVID being a perfect example, we weren't there. We created these little brochures that you see here on the left. Those are self-guided brochures that people could pick up on the trail when they arrived, and they could learn tree identification, bird identification, flowers. And so we were able to reach people even when we couldn't be on site. And then finally, in the last couple of years, our naturalist, our education director, James Dake, has had some interest in creating a field guide. And that has expanded into sort of a publishing wing of our education department. So we did publish the field guide to Northwest Michigan. We're on the second edition of that. And then this past year, we received some funding to do the field guide of Southeast Michigan. And then we've also done one on wetland flowers, and it's called the Great Lakes Wetlands Book, or Wetlands Walk. And that was in partnership with a local author, Peg Comfort. So that has been sort of a unique way to reach people, even if they don't come out to Grass River.
Jen, we have a question from Laureen, who's wondering if people can bring their own kayaks to Grass River.
So you can. To get into Grass River from our main site is difficult because there's a significant boardwalk in between the parking lot and the river. So what we recommend actually is, if you were to look at a map, look for Grass River Road, and it's basically between us and Bel Air, downtown Bel Air, off of M88. And if you take Grass River Road to the end, there's a little parking spot and an entrance. You could get into the river there, and then you could go paddle up and down from there. And that would be the easiest way to do that. But yeah, it's a beautiful spot, and it's really easy in and out, much easier than trying to come to our parking lot. Yeah, good question. Conservation, this is an area that we've done for 52 years, but just in the last year to two, we've really expanded this and put some effort and some energy and some resources into the conservation piece. So basically, of our 1,492 acres, this department, Emily Burke is our director, and you can see that that's the back of her there in the canoe. She goes into onto the properties, all 73 of them. She tries to get on once every 3 years, and looks at them, manages them, makes sure there's not a lot of if there's any sort of human disturbances, if there's invasive species. We monitor if there's notable species. So if we find something that's really special, we'll note that. So we have an entire database now for this property, and we can actually use that for future research projects. She's been collecting the data. So we've had data being collected for 52 years, but it's not ever really been put all in one spot. So Emily's working on a database for that. She focuses on invasive species ID and removal when it does happen. It does happen occasionally. I will say it's pretty minimal compared to other places I've been, but we're really careful to make sure that we're keeping those really sensitive areas clean of invasive species. And then most recently, she's been working with some statewide institutions. We discovered New Zealand mud snails in Grass River, which is an invasive species that's never been found in the chain of lakes until we found it in our small little creek. So she's been working with entities around the state to ID them, do some biological testing on them, and now we're trying to figure out what that looks like for the entire chain. So it's sort of a we're on the ground level of this particular invasive species, and hopefully keep it under bay if we can. She supports education as well. It's a fascinating area that she's in, and so she can do programming. She does our natural history talks. If you're on our Facebook page, you might have seen her. She does these beautiful little nature vignettes where you can watch for 3 to 5 minutes and learn a little bit about something in nature. And she also manages our volunteers as well. And we have a pretty robust team of volunteers to help us to keep track of all of these things and help do our programming and our gardening and our trail maintenance and our monitoring and all the good things. So that's just an overview of who we are. We do want to delve into the boardwalk because that is a highlight right now for us, and obviously for Impact 100, because that is the project that you funded for us. And so I'm going to let Betsy take over for a few minutes and share a little bit about the boardwalk.
Thanks, Jen. I want to assure you that we didn't actually plant Lorraine's question, but it is the perfect question to ask because our dock is not really very easily accessible now, but when the new boardwalk is constructed, it will be much easier for you to bring your kayak out across the boardwalk. Still not perfect, but much easier. So we have a total of 1.26 miles of boardwalk, and the construction began in the early 1980s, and it was by our volunteers. They went out, plotted it out, purchased the lumber, built the boardwalk piece by piece, and it served us very well. But since then, a lot of improvements have been made in the way boardwalks are structured, and also the budget of Grass River Natural Area has increased such that we can now look at more durable, lasting boardwalks, which are also ADA accessible and are better for the environment. So we are now getting ready to complete what is phase 2 of that overall improvement of the boardwalk system. We've made lots of repairs and tried to keep it up, but now we really need to replace it. And Jen is going to talk to you about the section that's already been redone because she has a great story about it.
Yeah, so when I started on June 18th of 2018, and the boardwalk materials were delivered on June, I think it was 15th. They were delivered here at the center, and the day I started is also the day the contractors were on the ground putting this boardwalk in. So it was pretty fascinating to sort of delve into this immediately, this big project. And so my predecessor, Haley, did the fundraising for this. They raised $410,000 to complete this project. The construction of it is on a Wickcraft panel system. And so that probably doesn't mean anything to anybody, but if you look at this picture here, you can see there are steel frames that set exactly where the original boardwalk was. So they obviously came in, they pulled all the old materials out. We reused what we could, we disposed of what we needed to. And then they brought in these metal frames. And these metal frames basically piece together like a puzzle piece, and they extend the length of the boardwalk. And then what happens is they bring in these 6-foot panels. So the boardwalk panels are already constructed in 6-foot sections. So there were big stacks of boardwalk. And so they'd haul those out, and the same concept, they'd hook those together like a puzzle piece. They'd attach them to the metal frames. And so those metal frames are just sitting on top of the ground. The only place we actually had to go into the soil was at the corner of each of our bridges. There's some helicals that delve down into the ground to be able to support these beams that create what we call free span bridges, Prior to this, there were probably a dozen pilings that sat under these bridges. It really restricted the flow of the water. And so we really, one of the pieces is we wanted to make sure when this was built is that they were free span. So we've got these fiberglass beams that support the bridges and those helicals. So we did finish this in the fall. It was only about a 2.5 month project. It was amazing how quickly they were able to piece it all together. And it is now almost 1/4 mile of an ADA accessible path that we can promote to folks. And I'll mention our friend Norma here. When I was here in the fall of 18, I was here for a work day, and a gentleman came in and asked if I was there. I just happened to be there. It was a Saturday, and I went and spoke with Robert, and Robert wanted to thank me. He wanted to introduce himself, but he also just wanted to let me know that he and his wife come to Northern Michigan probably 3 or 4 times a year from Illinois. Norma had a stroke several years ago and has not been able to get out and see fall colors. She just, I mean, other than from the road and driving around, they haven't been able to go anywhere. And so because of our new boardwalk system, he was able to bring Norma out, and he was in tears. And truthfully, when I think about this, and I think about, I mean, they still come very regularly, and she's just a gem. And to see her face light up because she can get out into these areas is really a special experience. So we're excited to be able to offer this to more folks in a larger scale with our newest design. The last thing I'll say is this perception pathway piece, and you'll see some pictures of this along the way. This particular boardwalk is part of our perception pathway, which was done prior to the construction of this. But basically, it's a coated cable that goes along the edge of the right side of the railing, and it's a big loop. And along the loop are some interpretive signs, and on those interpretive signs is Braille. And so we invite folks who are visually impaired to come out. They can do an entire loop on our boardwalk. By following this coated cable, they can stop and explore the senses, is what it's based on, and they can use the Braille signs to do that. We also had our field guide printed in Braille at the same time. So we've had a few folks come out and use that, and that'll be part of this continued reconstruction as we move forward. And then Betsy's going to share with us a little bit more about the next phase.
So the phase that we will use the Impact 100 funds for is the Grass River access. This is by far our most popular boardwalk area because it accesses the dock. You can go directly out to the river. It's an easy walk, short walk. So lots of families like to take it because of the fact that young children can do it quickly and have fun and see lots of great things along the way. It is 0.39 miles of boardwalk, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you are uninstalling and reinstalling boardwalk through a complete wetlands area, it takes some time and some careful management, because the contractors we've used have been very careful about not getting out and damaging the wetlands. So they take particular care to make sure that they have not left a bigger footprint than the one they came in with. So what you're seeing in this is our current dock out on the Grass River with some of our new kayaks, which is great. And this path leads from the cabin, which was one of the original properties that was purchased for us by Antrim County. And the cabin is still there. It's kind of a landmark area. And that's the beginning of this pathway. And it goes across Finch Creek right away and then out to the dock. So you can see the open area that it crosses. And one of the observation platforms, we are keeping the location for one of the current platforms, which is still has a great view of the river. The other platform has the vegetation has grown up around it such that you can't see as much. So we've chosen a new outlook that is closer to the river and which has a much better view. That will be the only part of the boardwalk that will be in a new area that will cross out into that area. And so I think people will really enjoy that. And all of the overlooks will be completely ADA accessible so that anyone can get up on them and look at them. There's a new bridge. As you see, we really need this bridge. The picture on the right is the picture of Finch Creek in the spring when it readily floods and comes up over the bridge itself. the new boardwalk will be raised by, it's a foot, I believe. Is that correct, Jen? Yes.
Actually, as much as 24 inches. It just depends
Okay.
on the area, but yeah.
So yes, it will significantly raise it. We'll also raise the level of the bridges so we won't have this much flooding. This bridge, if you could see, it also tilts, which is, you know, not ideal for when you're walking, especially in this kind of weather when it's icy. Often our boardwalks are icy. So we'll have a new bridge which will have the same free span as the bridges on the phase 1, which we think will make a huge difference in the flow of the creeks, and we'll know that in a couple of years. So that's great. And then this dock will be greatly changed and really improved. Right now, as you can see, you go up a little ramp to get on the dock. It's not very wide. And if you were to go to the right from our dock, you would see our current kayak landing area, which is not ideal. It works, but it is a floating pad, and it's the front lip of it sometimes is above the water level a little bit. So it's kind of hard to jump up there. It's great for launching, sometimes not as easy for getting back, but the new area, which Jen is about to show you, will really take care of that. So you can see this is not our dock, obviously, but it is a dock that was installed by our contractors, or our hoped contractors, and it will have a much larger landing area, just space for people to be in for our kayak racks. The second picture shows the new, completely, fully accessible kayak launch that we will be installing so that anybody can come and get in and get out. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I have old knees, and sometimes it's hard to get out of that kayak without some assistance. So this will mean everybody will be able to do this. And it will be really great. And it gives everybody access to the river, which is our goal, because we want people to see the beautiful Grass River and the areas around it. In this slide, you can see James Dick, our education director, barely in the picture, and he's in the spot where the new overlook will be. And as you can see, it has a beautiful vista out over the river. The other pictures just show the path of the boardwalk and the new overlook, so you can see the ramping that will go into them and how they will be accessible. The new boardwalk will be 6 foot wide, which is why it will now be more easy to take a kayak dolly out there and get your kayak out to the river. Currently, the turns are a little short, and some of the tree overhangs make it kind of difficult.
So what Betsy just described, we are calling phase 2, and that, again, that is the funding that we received from Impact will go towards that. The third phase is sort of what I'm calling the connector phases. And so this is going to be the Sedge Meadow Trail, which is the farthest north section, and then also this Fern Trail, which is down here. You'll see that in the map in a bit. And so a little bit, very close to the same distance. It's about 0.37 miles. And it's going to require, again, it's going to have a couple of bridges. It's going to have some seating areas as well. There will be some helicals involved as well. But this is what we're hoping to do as we finish the construction of the river access. We're hoping we can move right into the Sedge Loop phase, which then you can see some of the areas. Our bridges are tilting. We've got a kind of an observation platform here, which is a little precarious at times. And so that'll all be repaired as well. And then that Fern Trail, which I mentioned, is the loop that the rest of the perception pathway is on. You can see it. During COVID, we used the perception pathway as a storybook trail, which worked nicely as well. The Fern Trail is the one, if you ever come visit, you'll recognize it, I think, because this is what I call the fairy trail. It's just, it's very magical. There's a lot of moss and a lot of heavy tree canopy over this particular section. So we are working with contractors to figure out how we might be able to recreate that feeling on the Fern Trail. It might look a little bit different than the rest of the boardwalk, but to me, it's a really important sensory experience when you're on the Fern Trail. And I don't want to lose that by making a large, wider, more open space. And so that's something that we continue to work with our contractors on, and they've been fantastic to do that. There's a big seating area on Fern Trail, this large area here that crosses Finch Creek that'll be replaced, as well as the rest of the boardwalk. And then I'll just finish with some costs just so you can understand. And I see there's a this should be phase 2. Sorry, we've gone back and forth on phases, but phase 2 is the river access that we've been talking about. The cost of that is 1.1 million. We are 88% to our goal of 1.1 million. And I say that because the important part about this is we've not started our official campaign. This has been money raised through grants like Impact. We received a $300,000 grant from the state at the end of the year for the trust fund. And then a series of private donors who've come to us because they see Tamarack and they recognize how well built that was and how accessible it is. And they want to see us continue. They want to see us be successful. So they've come to us and said, we'd like to help you and continue to fund this project. So a significant portion of that funding is from private donors already. And then we're working on the major part of the campaign to finish the Sedge Meadow and Fern Trail, which is a cost of 1.3. And there's a few more. It's the farthest north. It's going to be the hardest one to get materials in and out of, as well as some of the old larger structures. So we'll continue to work on that. That extends our talk. We'll get out of here shared screen, and we'll come back as a group here.
So while she removes that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for allowing us to compile a wish list. And I know that Sam has already posted that. Thank you very much. I will let you know that there are a couple things on that wish list which are kind of paramount importance right now. Our laser printer in our business office has just packed up and died. And so we are unable to do any color printing of case statements or any of those things in-house, which is great. We do get the use of the Antrim County printer, but it is a black and white printer. So that would be great. And then our computers haven't been updated in a while in the offices, and it's slowing us down. And so we're ready to replace those, and hopefully we'll do it this year. But if anybody can help, we would love it. And there are some other things on the list as well that are probably way more exciting than technology.
Thank you so much. I've never been, I haven't been out to Grass River yet, but I can't wait to go, especially after seeing the pictures. It just looks so beautiful and peaceful out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I have a question. So you had mentioned that on the Fern Trail, especially where the wood gets wet, you have a lot of algae growth on the wood that makes it very slippery. Mm-hmm. Will you have any opportunity with the new building materials to combat that? Like, are there new materials out there to address that?
Well, the algae growth is a little challenging because there isn't necessarily material out there, but I will say the overall design is going to help. So currently, the boards, as you're walking down the boardwalk, you are walking along the length of the boards instead of across them. And so you're walking with the grain. So that immediately creates a more slippery surface. So it was designed 40 years ago, unfortunately, with a design that wasn't the best. So we're going to have a normal boardwalk structure now where you're walking across the grain. So that's going to help significantly. The other thing is that it's going to be raised. So our current structure is literally sitting on the ground. It was built on the wetland, basically. And so there are sections of it where we don't know how deep it's going to go. I'm sure there have been layers upon layers upon layers of repairs in the last 40 years. So if you think about all that moisture that it's sitting in, that also creates an issue as well. So I'm pretty confident that being raised, having the airflow underneath, and also having that new design of crossing the grain of the wood is going to be a significant increase. It's not to say that in 20, 30, 40 years, we're not going to have some algae. It's possible. We've never tried, people say, well, what about power washing? And that's a great idea, except that it's in the middle of the woods. And so unless you figure out a way to have some backpack power washer, I don't know that that's going to do any good for us. So, but good question.
Powered power washer. That's what you should put on your wish list. Like a backpack one with a leaf blower.
Yes.
That won't damage the environment.
Yeah.
Just a small detail.
We have a question in the chat.
Yep, I see that.
Great question.
Is there a cost to access Grass River?
There is not. So Grass River is a public space because it is because of the partnership with the county. So it is free to come walk our trails. We are open. That was something I was thinking about. We're open. The trails are open dawn to dusk, 365 days a year. A gate does not exist. Actually, you can come out whenever. The building itself is open this time of year, Saturdays and Sundays. It was just too slow in the weekdays to keep it open. But starting May 1st, we open 7 days a week through October 31st. And then we have limited hours in November, December, and then again, January through May, we go to Saturdays and Sundays. There is no entrance fee to the center. It's occasionally we'll have programs that have fees associated with them to help cover the cost of staff or supplies, but a majority of the just experience of coming to Grass River is at no cost.
If you want an immediate experience with one of our wonderful naturalists and educators, tonight there is a lantern lit snowshoe and ski, which is a beautiful, beautiful way to see the Grass River and very popular. And there is a cost to that program, but it is well worth it. And someone asked the other day whether they would be able to walk the boardwalk tonight without snowshoes or skis. And because of the melt we just had, you should be able to do that. It may be a little slippery, but you can do it.
Yeah, bring your yak tracks and bundle up. It's not going to be warm tonight again. So
I think Lisa has a question for you guys.
Hi there. First of all, let me just say thank you. I am fairly new to the area, so I am really excited to hear about this, and I can't wait to go. I'm not sure I'm going to go tonight, but it does sound really beautiful. Hopefully somebody will take pictures. I'm still adapting to the cold.
See our Facebook tomorrow.
Okay, wonderful. I will check that out and I'll get it posted and I'll share it. I'm just curious, and again, thank you for the presentation. I'm just curious how COVID has affected you guys, maybe positively or negatively. Just curious. It's something of interest as I talk to various organizations.
It is a good question. And you know, what we have found in our profession, and I talked to lots of nature center colleagues around the country, and because, you know, you noticed, and we talked about the visitation, because we have increased visitation, we're also getting increased support. And so our donations in the last 2 years, now granted, the help of things like the PPP loans were, you know, just super important for us, and they did help manage us through. But our actual individual donations at the end of 2021, we had the largest individual donation total that we've had year to date. So we continue to see, you know, people continue to see value and understand the importance of space like ours, especially during times like COVID when we couldn't all be together, but we could certainly be on trails or hiking with family and friends in safe ways. And so that has, you know, it's not I don't say a plus to COVID, but it was an upside to COVID. How's that?
Yeah. Well, and kudos in general to your fundraising abilities. And I can see why it would be easy to reach in your pocket and support this. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you,
that.
Lisa. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The other thing that happened with COVID that, and I don't know that Jen touched on, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but immediately our educators and naturalists started to pivot and figure out what we could do, since we knew we couldn't do any programming. Our trails were wide open and everybody could come and love them, but we did not have anything to educate anyone with. We couldn't have people out. So immediately they developed an activity a day on our Facebook page that kids could do or families could do together in their own backyard or come to the natural area and do it. We put the storybook trail up. Jen mentioned earlier that Emily started doing micro classes online, and several other people did that as well. And just lots of training, educational activities via Zoom. And it was really incredible to watch how creative and quickly these people adapted to, I mean, the day we got the news that we had to close, the faces couldn't have been more long. We were, you know, our whole summer camp program, our kids' camp for spring break had to be canceled. Everything, as everyone knows. By summer, our education director had put together a camp for kids in a box. So he sent out the materials, some of the materials they would have used for their camp experience, and they could do it at home, and they could come online to a class if they wanted to and see him, or they could just do the activities on their own. And he included a field guide at every one of them. So these kids, I bought them for my little great nephews, and we had a ball. You know, we tie-dyed a shirt, we pulled apart owl pellets, we did all sorts of things, and they really continued to have children be engaged in nature. And that was all because of our educators and naturalists.
Well, kudos to them. That's very exciting. As heartbreaking as so many things and then all the negative around COVID, it's so great to hear some of the positive things, and some of it I think is going to be permanent changes going forward. So thank you to you and your team for all of that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We have a comment in the chat from Karen, who said that she attended a training given by James Stake and that it was excellent.
Yeah, James is our education director. And if you've ever met James, I think your first blush with him is that he's a very quiet, very kind, generous person, but he gets in front of a group of people and he is captivating. It is so fun to watch. I'm used to educators who tend to be sort of the song and dance and and James is not that way. And it's so effective. People just really are attracted to him and he's brilliant. He knows so many things about the natural world. So Karen, that's great. I'm glad you had a chance to meet him and spend some time with him.
His passion for nature just exudes from him when he's speaking. It's wonderful.
Terrific.
Jen, I noticed that one of our longtime supporters and someone who loves Grass River very much is on this call. And we know how important this new boardwalk is to her because she would like her husband to be able to get out there and see the river. So thank you, Impact100, for making this possible for certainly one of your very own members to realize a dream, and for so many others as well.
Yeah, I agree. Nice to see the name.
I would like to say that today is the man's 96th birthday.
Oh, Betsy!
And he can only get to Grass River with his walker. And so there's a very limited trail right now that we've been able to take. And he would say, oh, I've been this way before. And he longs to go down to the river. So hurry up and get it built, and we'll keep hanging on for another birthday.
Tell Stan that we're all singing happy birthday to him.
We are. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the improvements that you're putting in place for ADA are so important. I think that's something that means a lot to me. And I think that really it makes things safer for everyone, even people who don't have, mobility impairments.
Yeah. Well, and we know that there's very limited space in Northern Michigan. It's getting better. I mean, we are seeing more and more boardwalks. But the thing about Grass River that I always tell people is the ability to get into this beautiful, natural, super high quality environment that I mentioned earlier is it's just unique. I mean, lots of boardwalks and, little wetlands or, forests, but to be able to literally immerse yourself into this high quality experience is really special. So
I have put Grass River's website and their Facebook page in the chat. So follow them on Facebook. Make sure that you check out the events and things that they have coming up on their website. And before we wrap up, I just want to see if anybody has any other questions for Grass River before we go. Thank you so much, Jen and Betsy, for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Grateful to get the opportunity to know more about Grass River, and I can't wait to go visit.
Please, please come see us. Let us know when you're coming out. We'll give you tours if you're interested in that. And thank you all for spending a few minutes of your day today to learn a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you're
Bye,
doing.
everybody. Happy weekend.
Bye. Yep. Have a great weekend.